actually, I need help. You as my employer need to do something to assist us with this. We as a community and as a society need to come together to do more together. It doesn't matter our industries. When we come together as a collaborative voice and start bringing about change, like these platforms, that's when we're going to start seeing real change happening. Otherwise, we're just going to sit quietly and continue doing 1,001 things, burn ourselves out, not advance our careers, then sit back and feel like these failures because I haven't achieved this or haven't achieved that or whatever it might be. And it creates a whole other stereotype of issues that women continue to face.
Let's talk about the change. What support structures should be implemented then?
So from a mining perspective, I think, we've engaged in multiple conversations, and I think a lot of industry is starting to do it so from a mining context, a lot of the mining operations take place in fairly rural areas. I think there's a huge responsibility on mining houses to start creating a community that supports having women in that workforce. If women are going out to further rural areas and they're leaving kids behind or families behind because there's no space to take care of them or there's no support, I think we need to start allowing for whether it's daycare centers, clinics, facilities to be established. And I think that the mining houses have a responsibility to start creating that or building that community around the mine. Because it's those people that are actually adding to the profitability of the mine, right? So we need to be doing those things. I think COVID taught us all the importance of flexibility. So creating those flexible working hours, I mean, it's not impossible. Allowing people the time to go and do the little things that they need to do. I think we desperately need to relook at maternity leave policies, being able to have facilities that accommodate women that are lactating, that need those additional time and care that needs to be afforded to them, such that they can do what they need to do, they can recover better. Like I said, how much time do we have? There's a long list.
Yeah.
But I think if we don't start with those changes, and we don't start talking about it quite honestly, I think that's probably the first thing we all need to do. We need to have some honest conversations about the problems that exist and what it is that we can tangibly do to see difference. Else we're going to sit here next year and have the same conversation.
Yeah. Anel, I want to bring it back to you and talk about maybe some of the ways that you at P&G are really combating the representation of women when it comes to care, how they are represented as well, and how they're represented in the media.
Yeah. So just to pick up off of the point, that you raise about the women in mining and re-looking at the policies that reinforce the status quo, for us it's been really important to drive the idea, right, that care is everyone's responsibility. It's not gendered. It's an unconscious bias that we think it's only about the woman. And one of the ways that we have sort of turned this on its head is by offering paid paternity leave to men. And I think we're one of the few organizations that does this in South Africa, and something that we're really proud of, that we support new dads to go home and be with the mom and support the baby as much as the mom ought to as well. In terms of the representation of care in the media, there's a really great campaign that we have on Ariel, so one of our washing or detergent brands, and it's called #ShareTheLoad. So whenever you see a washing powder brand, who's washing the clothes?
Of course, the mother.
It's the mother, it's the woman. And we have had now representation where you see sons washing, you see dads washing, and just that subtle, messaging of how we represent care and just demonstrate that it's all of us. We all need to do it.
Yeah. Jeanette, what potential does the care economy have in creating employment and developing skills for South Africans?
Just repeat, potential who has?
The care economy. What potential does it have in creating employment and developing those skills for South Africans?
It has huge potential.
Yeah.
So we all know nursing has traditionally been a female sector, a woman's sector. And we welcome the fact that men are moving into nursing, not just into management positions, but moving into nursing, because that bodes well for equity and equality, and bodes well for the feminist movement, that more men are becoming feminists themselves. And so there's a range of possibilities, scopes, and levels for especially women because the issue we are talking about here today is for women in junior management, middle management, senior management, but also in terms of lateral enrichment of job, moving into areas, specialty areas that are still today, I wish I could say formally, but still today men-dominated, like your specialist surgery areas, like specialist dentistry, orthodontics, and so on. We are not doing enough to get more women in. I want to use a young woman as an example, because this is the 21st century, and we're still celebrating too many firsts. First woman to have done this, especially first black woman to have done this. We would have thought we would put that behind us a century ago, and it would today be the norm. But I want to use an example of a young woman, Dr. Lydia Sadali, who we celebrated as recently as 2018 for becoming the first cardiothoracic surgeon. And she has a very unique history of growing up first in rural Eastern Cape, then rural Northwest, then studying medicine through the Cuban program because of the different levels of exclusion in South Africa's health education system. Moving on to specialize and qualifying in KwaZulu-Natal at our Albert Luthuli Hospital there. When you speak to her, her experience is nothing but rosy. She will tell you that she was tested to the point of failure to succeed in that area, because you have to prove yourself as a woman. And we need to do away with that. How many private sector organizations in South Africa actually has continuous sensitivity training in terms of gender? And I said private, because in public it doesn't exist. And these are the things that we have to do. So Carol, there's huge scope, but there are the barriers that people in my position has the responsibility to get out of the way of young women to really excel and prosper throughout the health sector. Because we know when you make more room for women, you do change the environment to a more just and to a more equal society. And this is exactly what I'm working on at the moment. The government has a policy that says 50% of senior managers should be women. And I can tell you some provinces do well, but right now at the national department, that statistic is 46%. And this is in an area that's greatly women-dominated. And the mistake we also make is to do recruitment, do shortlisting, and sit as an interview panel and wait for a sufficiently qualified woman to present herself. No, that development has to start, if we speak about health, with student nurses, junior nurses, students in physiotherapy, radiotherapy, to nurture them either to broaden their careers laterally or to be able to climb the ladder if they choose.
Where do men fall in this dialogue, when it comes to this dialogue, Tan?
Sorry,
The men, where do they fall when it comes to this dialogue, when we're talking gender equality and you know, the care industry as well, like men, where do they feature in this dialogue?
You know, I think people misunderstand what gender equity is and what the gender discourse is about. Gender does not belong to women. It belongs to everyone who's a human being. The idea that it is only women who are gendered beings is part of the mythos and the mythology that is packaged in patriarchy. Men have fitted in this discourse since the beginning of time, because it has been the participation of both men and women that has led to this outcome. So for me, I think there are 3 ways for us to move forward meaningfully. The first, folks, is that we have to stop perpetuating, perhaps not intentionally, gender stereotypes. And I want to give you an example of something that I find very problematic, that is a perpetuation of gender stereotypes that is very dangerous, which is when Mother's Day comes around, celebrate, oh, give your mother a break. It's almost like we have a day where we celebrate the patronage of women. It is very condescending, it is very undermining, and it is a very subtle way and a very obnoxious way of saying that this is women's role in society, but on this one day, we will make sure, gents, that you cook or you make something for Mother's Day. Those, for me, are incredibly dangerous, subtle and obnoxious ways of reinforcing gender stereotypes. The other one, and this is very important, and I'd have to call out Standard Bank and institutions and organizations like Standard Bank, and I'm glad Procter & Gamble is here, and any other private sector institution, is that we need to start collectively elevating the importance and the significance of the family unit. Now, I do not care what a family looks like, whether it is 2 mothers, whether it is 2 dads, it's neither here nor there. But what you must understand is that colonial conquest relied on breaking up African families. It relied on ensuring that men were taken away from the home, taken away from their communities, and women were left in what was called Bantustans and rural areas that also remained underdeveloped to this day. So if we really want to make an impact in our society, what it means is that the private sector must give enough hours for people to spend time with their families on a daily basis. The fact that our days begin 8 o'clock, and if you are at work before 8 o'clock, you get brownie points. You haven't dropped your kids off at school. You haven't been able to have breakfast with your kids and to have a conversation with your kids. The fact that we finish work at 4 or 5 p.m., we don't get to see our kids develop and grow, and we expect the same people to be progressive, functional human beings is absolute preposterous. And if we really want to make a change, let's call out to the private sector that continues these colonial practices in modern times. The last thing that I want to say is, and I'm calling out now the women in this room who've got privilege. Now, we've spoken about the care economy. The care economy includes domestic work and domestic workers, who in this country, in the majority, are women of color, and to be very specific and frank, are colored women and in the main black women. I want to know from the women here, or you can tell me by wiggling your toe under the table, I won't be able to see. How many of you can say with your chest, as white women who've got domestic workers, that you pay your domestic workers equitably? You call them your helpers, they're not your helpers. They are domestic workers, and they fought for that title. But just by the way, they're not part of your family, they have their own family, they have children, and they have left their homes to come and contribute to you flourishing in your own home. So I mean, how many of you as privileged women, even you black women, women of color, colored women, how many of you can say with your chest that your domestic worker or your employee at home, your caretaker, whatever you want to call them, whatever they're comfortable being called, can say with your chest that you pay them well? How many of you? That's how, Sis Carol, we break the cycle. All of us have got a role to play, and even ourselves as women, we have to call ourselves in. As men, we all have got a role to play. But the private sector in particular has got a tremendous role of breaking the chains and breaking the cycle of how they arrived on our continent and how they continue to exist in our society today.
Thank you, Tando. As we wrap it up, a final one. I was supposed to ask you this earlier as well, when you were talking about some of the initiatives when it comes to PNG, right? How can women get involved or apply to some of these initiatives?
Yes, that's a very good
So
one.
important, yeah.
Yeah, so we have the PNG Women Entrepreneurs Academy, which we touched on earlier. We want more women suppliers. We want to support women in their businesses. So I am still here. I will be here. We have a table over there. We can connect on LinkedIn. Fortunately, my name is on the program, and we have a website. I'm just offering in the steps of importance, you know, me here in person, LinkedIn, and our website. And on the Always program initiative, we have the Always Africa website, so you can go on over there to help donate a pads to young girls, and we will facilitate that through the foundation.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Round of applause for my panelists. Thank you. Hey, the time. This is what, thank you so much, guys. This is what we want to do, spark these conversations and continue the conversations throughout the conference. So big thanks to all of my panelists for your contributions and, of course, sparking these very, very important conversations as part of the Standard Bank Top Women Conference. Now, talking about these important conversations, another one is that of youth transforming Africa. The importance of youth-led solutions to driving socioeconomic impacts. This leads us to our next conversation, a narrative that is focused on the active engagement and empowerment of Africa's youth demographic. Please welcome our speakers to stage, the Head of Enterprise Development at Standard Bank, Naledzani Musumani, coming up. And medical doctor and Miss South Africa 2018, Dr. Tamron Green Ngumalo, also here with us. I love this. So now the focus on the youth. Can you see the youth? Nalezan, so Africa has the fastest growing youth population in the world. 60% of its population under the age of 25. Can you imagine all that potential? As head of enterprise development at Standard Bank, what is the importance of empowering this demographic? Yeah. So we're talking about the power of the youth, you know, such a big and important demographic on the African continent. Tamron, the access, though, to education and other opportunities really does remain such a big, big challenge for many young people. So How can we ensure that our youth are able to actually transform Africa?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. As you mentioned, while education and so many opportunities are still very limited, that doesn't mean that we must forget that education is still one of the most important ways of empowering our kids. So we still have to encourage our government, our private sectors, to feed into resources and access to quality education. If we look at the statistics in Africa, because we are talking about Africa, the ratio is about 1 teacher to 40 children in a class. And a teacher needs to teach a few classes a day. Whereas, according to experts, the ideal ratio should be 1 to 18 to create a really healthy learning environment for children. So we really have to look at these statistics, and we have to work on training more teachers, providing more access to resources for our children. But very importantly, we need to create opportunities to upskill our young people. And when I say this, I mean by upskilling children means transforming Africa. This is by not only looking at education, but looking at our creatives, looking at carpenters, beneficiation, looking at, sorry, I'm not sure if,
I think grab the handheld just in case.
okay. Yep, sorry about that. So it's looking at our creatives, carpenters, laborers, those type of skills, because in my opinion, there should be no reason that there aren't another 1,000 black coffees out there. We have so much talent in our continent, so much talent in our country. We should create the opportunities and the environments for people with these talent to be identified and to grow and to get opportunities to share it. That's one example. I don't believe that we should be a continent that has the largest timber farms, yet we are sending them off instead of, and then purchasing them back after being manufactured and produced. Why are we not upskilling our own youth, own young people, to gain those skills to take the timber, produce the products here, and sell it? Why is that happening in reverse? Another example that I know that we can do is by sending our young people abroad. Send them to go and train, to pick up those skills, bring it back to Africa. An example I can give you of that is Japan and whiskey. A few decades ago, they knew nothing about whiskey. However, they decided to send a young person who was quite determined, sent them to Scotland. They learned everything there was about whiskey, and they brought it back to Japan. And today, Japan is the leading force in whiskey. So we need to think of these type of initiatives. And very importantly, we need to understand that education is important, but there are other ways of upskilling our young people. If you feed someone for one day with fish, they are fed for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, they're fed for a lifetime, and they can feed their families, they can feed the community. So help them gain the skills.
Yeah. So we're talking about some of the challenges for the youth. Yep, a round of applause. Sorry about that. So just continuing to talk about the challenges that the youth face. Naledzani, South Africa is struggling with youth unemployment. We know the numbers. Youth unemployment rate of 45.3% confirmed by Stats SA. How do you rise above youth unemployment? Yeah.
supporting the schools, particularly higher education. From a corporate space, when I start thinking about the support that we can give to young people that are outside of the schooling environment, there's also quite a few things. As corporates, we can help create those development programs that help give those young entrepreneurs the business development skills that they need to be able to grow and sustain successful businesses. I think there's also an opportunity to focus on how are we deliberate in ensuring that our procurement spend within our supply chain, a portion of it goes to SMEs that are young, youth entrepreneurs. And then the last one is, from a financial sector perspective, both commercial financial institutions as well as development financial institutions, I think there's an opportunity where the business case of a youth entrepreneur stacks up to support these SMEs with access to funding at what we would typically call your softer rates. So your interest-free loans, your grants, your collateral, any way to really help them grow and sustain their businesses.
Tamara, I want us to talk about... I want us to talk about the role that Africa's youth play in affecting positive changes in the region's socio-economic landscape. What role does Africa's youth play here?
I do feel that Africa's youth can make an even more positive impact than what they are at the moment. The reason why I'm saying that is not because they aren't already doing this, but I think they can do it a lot better. Unfortunately, Africa's youth are faced with specific limitations and challenges that I feel is not allowing them to do exactly what they want to do and how they want to do it. So if you look at the pool of talent that we have in Africa, what needs to happen is that they need to be included in spaces where we talk and have the conversations around society, economics, finances, religion. We need to give them the space. We need to give them the conversations to join in so that they can be exposed to it. I don't feel like that is happening in Africa specifically. I say that because I don't know about you, but growing up, whenever I was in a space with family or friends or colleagues or work colleagues, when there's a lunch, it's always said the young people need to sit on that side and the older people, please sit on that side. And I do understand that there are certain topics where you do not want young people to sit in that conversation, but when it comes to important issues, such as the growth of our country and how to tackle challenges that we have, they need to be a part of that conversation. Because there's a very famous saying that says, what children cannot see, they cannot be. So if our children are not sitting in the conversations and hearing about politics, they never will be that. If you look at countries, other countries in the world, there are some companies who have executives who are in the age of 30 to 40. And this is because they are given leadership positions at a younger age. And those positions don't need to mean power. It just needs to mean skills transference as well as mentorship, so that by the time they reach 40, they're already at the level of a 60 or 70-year-old in this spectrum or in this sphere. So we really need to work on ways to get our young people into the conversations and into the spaces at a younger age. And that's why I'm so fortunate to be sitting here with everyone, because I feel like that's an opportunity for me as well. I'm still under that bracket of under 30. But I get to hear everyone's opinions, I get to hear everyone's ideas, and this immediately inspires me. Sorry, my last thing I'm going to say, I can see you like, time.
No, not at all.
For example, if you have to put me or Naletsani, if we are sitting in a group of 10 doctors, empowered doctors every day, we'll be more likely to want to learn that knowledge, to be doctors, to be empowered. Exact same thing goes for if you put me in a group of economists. I want to learn it, I want to be it, because I'm seeing it. But the same goes if you put them in a group of people who are unemployed, who are maybe facing personal problems. You are more likely to be focused on your issues, on your downfalls, instead of looking at it in the opposite way.
Mm-hmm. No, we've got time. We've got time. To our virtual audience, just a reminder, those of you that are on Hopin, of course, will be giving you an opportunity later on for your Q&A. So there is that Q&A session that will be available later on. We're acknowledging, we see you, and of course, I know lots and lots of you have questions for our panelists here. So we'll give you an opportunity a little bit later on as well. And also, as these conversations continue, we're seeing the questions that are coming in from Hopin. So keep them coming. Thank you so much. I want to ask you the same question as well, is the role that Africa's youth do play in affecting positive changes, on the continent.
I think they play, Tamrin touched on it, they play a major role, a critical role. And for a number of reasons. Africa's youth are agile, they're adaptable. We know the environment that we're living in. Our operating landscape keeps on changing on a constant basis, and you need to have people that are able to adapt to that change. The youth also, they change the status quo. They're curious, they're exploratory, they ask questions. And if we go back to that first question about empowering youth, and if we go back to saying, how do we enable economic development, you need to have people that are willing to ask the right questions, that are willing to change the state of affairs, and that are empowered and feel empowered to do what it is that they need to do. So they're extremely critical.
We've got this growing pool of young talent on the African continent. How do we increase youth inclusion in politics, in society, in the economy? I'll start off with you, Alexander.
So we, in my view, need to be deliberate in ensuring that we create spaces for young people. Tamrin touched on it. How do we make sure that in leadership positions you have young people? How do you make sure that in our teams, in corporate, even if you own a business, you have a mixture of young people? And then how do we ensure that we create market opportunities, particularly for young SMEs who are looking for opportunities to grow their businesses, to sustain their businesses, and to scale? I think being deliberate is the most important thing.
Is it happening at Standard Bank?
It is.
Yeah.
We have a strong focus on enabling young people within our talent pool. We have a mixture of people from different ages. I would like to say I'm one of those young people. And even in terms of the businesses that we support within our business and commercial banking space, we've been very deliberate to say, how do we develop enterprises through our enterprise development programs, and how do we give funding at softer terms to businesses that qualify for funding?
Okay, I like that. Round of applause. Yeah. Tamrin, how do we do that? How do we increase youth inclusion in politics, in society, in the economy?
I think I touched on it earlier when I said creating those spaces, allowing them into the conversation, but also very importantly, you touched on it earlier, where companies have to have these policies in place, and we do have these policies in place to ensure that we have youth involved. But I also know that there's not always people who are tracking that information. Are they actually tracking? Yes, they are providing the opportunities for the youth to join in, but are the youth actually upskilled enough to take on those positions? Also, if we provide these opportunities, sorry, I just lost my track of thought, but essentially we need to, as I said, provide those spaces, provide those conversations. Don't let it be a fearful thing for a young person to step into a conversation of adults and want to also contribute. I think that's the most important thing right now.
I think what's interesting about this conversation and why it has such an important place in this women's conference is that we're talking about almost similar things here. We're talking about women and what an important role they play in society. And now we're talking about the youth and the fastest growing demographic, 60% of the population under the age of 25. So, this is a demographic that holds so much power. And the reason why we're saying it's so important to empower the youth, the reason why we're saying this is such an important demographic, Tamrin. Yeah.
You can look at the statistics in Africa, it's 60%.
Yeah.
But if you look at the statistics globally, it's 40% of all the people in the world is younger than 25. Isn't that just a significant number? And it's rising every day. So that just again emphasizes how important it is to invest and empower that group or that population, because they are going to be the majority at some point. In Africa, they already are. And that's how we ensure that we create a better future for our continent, and that we create a better future for the coming generations.
All right, we've got a question from Faith on Hopin. Hey, Faith, thank you so much for this one. So the question here for other of our panelists, Naledzani, you can start, I guess. On the point on young people holding leadership positions, how can we empower young leaders to overcome ageism that may happen in one form or another? Yes.
I think it's important, Tamron touched on it, the skills transfer. So when you have young people in leadership, I think it's also important to equip them with the skills to take on those leadership positions. I think it's also important to sensitize the teams in which you operate in, that for us to grow, for us to meet our financial targets, we need diversity. And diversity just doesn't include gender, it also includes age, and it includes race. So emphasizing that within the teams, ensuring that the young people that are given these leadership positions, there's a skills transfer, and there's a training or development program while they're in the position, is one of those things that will help overcome some of those challenges that come with ageism.
Yeah? Tamron?
I think it's, as you said earlier, we can compare it to what's happening with women empowerment.
Yeah.
You know, it's all everything that we're putting in place for women to have a voice, to have inclusivity of women in our businesses, in our companies. The exact same thing should be implemented for ageism or younger age groups.
And the importance as well of seeing young leaders, you know, in different sectors like yourselves, of having more and more examples like this. Can you talk about that importance, Naledzani?
It's critical, because if I'm a young person and I see a young person in a leadership role, then I believe I can actually be in that role at some point. I think it's really critical, and it also shows that if I start thinking from an organizational perspective, it also shows that there's room for growth for young people within an organization. So you need to make sure that your team is balanced and has the right mixture from an age perspective.
And your personal story that led you to where you are.
I wasn't expecting this one. So my personal story, I started in the bank about 9 years ago.
Okay.
And I really had sponsors who were really believed in my growth. I've been fortunate to have a number of positions within the bank in Africa and within South Africa as well. And it's really people believing in me, people believing in my skill. And I think me working hard, I'm going to pat myself on the back as well and say I worked hard.
I think that's important, because it's not just about giving them the opportunities, realizing how important the youth are and saying, all right, let's give them the platform, give them the opportunities. But once those opportunities are given, for you to work hard at it and to show how capable you are.
Yeah, it's very important.
Good stuff. Yeah? Tamron, your personal story as well.
I think, I'm from Paarl, and we're a very small town. And because of the history of our country, a lot of our parents have the mindset that, you have to study, get a degree, and that's it. For the rest of your life, that is what you do. Because we're paying for this. And then I had the opportunity to enter Miss South Africa. And again, this was someone who saw potential in me, someone who also gave me the opportunity. And in that specific year, it was actually a female dean that took over. And it was as if God just came and he was like, you know what, you need this.
Yeah.
And as a woman, as a female, she said, don't even worry about it. Take off the time, do your thing, go and empower us women. You can come back anytime to study again. And if it wasn't for another woman wanting to empower another woman, and a young woman at that, I would not have had that opportunity. Many people said, please don't do it now, please first finish your studies. And I told them, there's more to us. We are multifaceted. You don't just have to study and stick to your degree and stick to your line of work. so many other doors will open for you. This door is open for me because of that as well. So that is part of my journey.
Mic drop. Wow, unbelievable stuff. So another big round of applause to our panelists. It's unbelievable, guys. Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you, Naledzani. Wow, wow, wow. Really, really awesome stuff. Thank you so much. Oh man, we are in the presence of greatness here. We said important individuals, of course, not just in South Africa, but on the African landscape, and of course, key individuals from government. So once again, another big warm round of applause as we acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Deputy Minister who is in our midst. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of a big round of applause, everyone. Wow. To all of our delegates that are joining us online, thank you for being involved, sending through all of your questions, and we're going to try and get to as many as possible because you are just as important. Just over 20,000 of you that are engaged in everything that is happening here. So good to have all of you here. All right, there we go. The Honorable Deputy Minister, there we go. Round of applause, everyone. Fantastic stuff. All right, let's continue this conversation. I'm loving it. In our next panel, we are going to expound on what it is that we discussed earlier on, and we're going to focus on the Gen Z change makers, catalyzing innovation and progress in Africa's workforce. We're going to talk about the groundbreaking impact of Gen Z on Africa's workforce, diving in terms of them driving innovation and propelling progress. Now, this conversation is really going to showcase how Gen Z's unique traits are reshaping work dynamics, how they're fostering collaboration and igniting positive change across industries. Please welcome our panelists on stage. We've got Human Resources Executive at Kia South Africa, P2I Limited, Letitia Naidu. Please come up on stage. We've got the youngest chairperson and member of parliament from the Gauteng Provincial Legislature coming up, Honorable Fasia Hassan. The head of digital and interactive marketing at Standard Bank, Lesego Nqamu, please come on stage. And joining us virtually is the co-founder and business development of the Thuli Madonsela Foundation. We've got Wenzile Madonsela, who's also joining us virtually. Hi, Wenzile, we see you. Awesome stuff. All right, let's talk about Gen Z. So, born after 1997, they really are the digital natives. They've had the most exposure to technology and digital tools. So, Lesego, as head of digital and interactive marketing at Standard Bank, how should we be changing our workplaces and business models to accommodate Gen Z?
Thank you, Carol. Hey, everybody, what a great turnout. I'm nervous.
No need.
I should clear the air.
You're among friends. Yeah.
Safe space. I think the Gen Z generation is well known for being the woke generation. Yeah. They're the generation that has been exposed to information, literally born with technology of phones in their hands. And this creates a great opportunity for the workforce to adapt to them, creating spaces where they can be flexible. Thanks to 2020, with its flaws and all, flexibility was experienced by a lot of organizations. And what is key for the Gen Z is the ability to be able to work in flexible hours. Give them that flexibility, adapt your working hours to not be strict. The other thing that is key with this generation is they're very self-aware about their mental state, self-aware about the communities they work with. And for organizations, it empowers them to nurture mental wellness, create spaces where they can embrace work-life balances. And I think how our operating models and organizations need to change, it needs to embrace that change, create flexible workspace, create technology that can help them be more productive, and support them through their mental wellness and spaces where they can talk about mental wellness. From my experiences, it's the Gen Zs in my team that have helped me embrace the taboo of mental wellness conversations.
Oh, wow.
It's the Gen Z that have opened up conversations of, I'm really not okay to do this job right now, and it's got nothing to do with my incompetence, but myself, I cannot give what you're expecting of me, line manager. How can you support me? So if you can create those spaces, I think they will definitely give a lot to organizations.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Fasia, the youngest chairperson, member of parliament in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, tell us how Gen Z is fostering collaboration and igniting positive change in our society.
Lisako touched on it already. Don't worry,
Yeah.
you did great. You did great. Women supporting women. You're quite right. The Gen Z, sort of as a generation, as a group of people, not everybody is homogenous. Of course, there's different types and different sort of mechanisms and characteristics. But what is for sure is that the young people that we are interacting with, that I belong to as well, are impatient for change.
Yeah.
And while that was often seen, especially as we were growing up, as a negative thing, they said you want instant gratification, you want things now, you want things like this. And while I think at the time it was a different conversation, now, if you focus that lens on social justice, on social change, you're getting a generation that's saying, actually, it's not okay. It's not okay that we're in a climate crisis. It's not okay that corruption is the order of the day. It's not okay that in a country 30 years down the line, we are still experiencing the kinds of service delivery issues that we are. So in many ways, that fire, that same thing that took us to the streets during Fees Must Fall, is exactly what we're now starting to see in different spaces, whether it be in corporate, where we're changing the corporate culture slowly, where we're actually saying it's okay to be a human being. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to have a day where you actually just can't. Or in politics, where we're saying the status quo must change. Whether they like it or not, we're going to kick the door down and come through. Or very importantly, in the civil society space. So for me, even though it's a bit difficult and not everybody understands our generation, it's part of that societal change. It's part of the world changing over. And I'm sure 10 or 20 years from now, there'll be a new generation of young people and we'll have another panel. And I might say, you see, we achieved X, Y, Z. Now the next generation take it forward. So in that way, you're seeing a great amount of change, but that does not absolve us from saying we're done.
Yeah.
It's not okay just to be politically conscious, right? It's not okay only to just say, keyboard kind of activist. We need to take it to the next level.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Letitia, we're seeing many African countries making space for this growing youth population in their workforce. In Uganda, 75% of the population are below 30. So, as the human resources executive at Kia South Africa, how are Gen Z's unique traits reshaping work dynamics?
So I won't lie, I think it was definitely a bit of a challenge in the beginning, especially in an industry like the motor industry, because everyone is kind of set in their ways. And I think when Gen Zs have started entering our workforce, they've forced a shift, right? Because they're not the generation that'll just accept everything. So if there's a toxic culture, they will leave. If they feel like they are being marginalized in any way, they will leave. If they feel like from a work-life balance perspective, they're not getting what they need, and if there's no purpose and meaning in their jobs, they will leave. And I think how that's managed to reshape the environment that we're in is that it's forced us to actually put in initiatives that mean something. So before, we're, especially in HR, sitting at that executive table, when you put an initiative on the table, it's a tick box, right? So it's that tick box exercise of, yes, we have to do this, we have to do that, diversity is important, equity is important. Oh yes, people need to feel like they belong, but it can no longer just be empty words. And I think that's what I found more than anything, is because before, people were just accepting, oh yeah, no, you have something in place, it's working, but now you have to actually make sure that it's making an impact and it's making a difference. So all of the initiatives that you put in place have to have absolute purpose behind them, because if people are not finding that purpose and meaning in their jobs, they're going to leave us. So definitely not just about the normal 8 to 5, I'm here because I'm earning a salary. That's not it anymore. Your salary that you are giving your employees is not enough. It's not enough to just say, yes, but I'm paying them to do a job, they need to do a job. No. You need to create that environment for them to thrive. You have to make sure that it's an environment for continuous learning, for development, for them to actually step up. And what Fasiha was saying just now is 100% that instant gratification. You see a lot of managers like, yeah, but why do they want to be? Why do they feel like they have to be managers right now? It's because they've worked hard. They know what they are worth. And I think that, for me, has been the biggest shift in terms of Gen Zs. They know what they're worth, and they're not afraid to ask for what they want.
I like what you're saying. They force the change. Do you find that, Fasiha?
Yeah, I actually couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's causing a lot of upsets all over the place, but it's quite true. And I think it's also important. You know, so often, especially as women, and that's another important conversation to have here, we accept less than we're worth. We take on more for half the credit. We are never as acknowledged as we should be. And this generation of young women coming through are actually like, no. You're going to acknowledge me on the paper, even as an academic. You're going to acknowledge me in the Gauteng legislature to be a chairperson. Many people were upset that I became a chair over a lot of other people, sure, but it was quite right because we worked extremely hard, but also because we said, actually, what's next? Right? We're investing in this space. You want to invest in young people. What is the next step? And I find so often people in my generation also, right, salary negotiations. Going into job interviews, expectations. So in as much as I think it upsets people, it is actually important to sort of change that space, but also to take women forward. Perhaps this is the time where we genuinely get equal pay for women, both in the public and the private sector, because women are saying, actually, we deserve more and we are worth more.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Hey, Wenzile. So Gen Z, they're more racially and ethnically diverse than any previous generation. How is it that we can harness this strength?
Good afternoon. It is an absolute pleasure to sit here today and shed some light on transformative force that is reshaping our world, that is our indomitable spirit of Gen Z. This generation, to my view, is born into a world of rapid technological advancement and has not only embraced innovation, but has also redefined its very existence. Today, I want to emphasize on how these young pioneers are not just leading, but revolutionizing innovation, especially in their remarkable prioritization in mental health. Recent studies have showcased that the resilience of Gen Z, not just as digital natives, but as individuals dedicated to fostering a workplace culture that values mental well-being. And there was a study done by the American Psychological Association which showed that Gen Zs are the most stressed generation. 91% of them are reporting physical or emotional symptoms due to stress. And I think that because of those stresses that come to them, Gen Zs are able to quickly use the information age, use the internet, your TikToks, and find social innovation. Their businesses are being skewed to look at how can I fix a problem. They no longer where Maslow's hierarchy was, whereas the generation before, they were so fixated on the nuclear home and having access to housing, having access to transport, data, and we find ourselves coexisting with a radical generation that is looking to go beyond Maslow's hierarchy of needs and actually bring needs to the fore that need to be addressed. Right now we're all aware what's happening in Palestine and Israel, but because Gen Z are very informed, they are able to take decisions and use empathy and compassion to drive their social innovations, to drive their businesses, to drive how the workplace should look like within the Gen Z mindset.
Oh yes, Wenzile, quite right. Just talking about how resilient Gen Z are and what it is that makes them such a powerful and important demographic. We've got a question from Hopin from Danusha Dugalu. Danusha, thank you so much for your question. Danusha's question is, employee wellness is directly proportionate to an organization's policies that affect them. How do we get mental health, emotional, mental, and well-being of employees taken seriously in South Africa? I don't know who wants to start answering that question.
I can start. It starts with discourse. We need to create spaces where we talk about these issues and make them less issues, but topics of discussion, and we solve together. I think we can all solve alone in our own silos, but it's never sustainable, and it's up to the organizations, because organizations don't work outside of communities. Those people living in those communities are the ones that you need to accept into your spaces and work with them. So give them the spaces to share about their fears, what makes them uncomfortable. Key advice from an organization perspective is don't be uncomfortable if it makes you uncomfortable. That's okay to be uncomfortable, and empower each other to talk through the discomfort until there is a formidable solutions and the ways of working that agrees on both parties. I think it all starts with discourse.
Great stuff. Follow up, Eno?
I thought I would speak after Letitia because these are the subject matter experts.
Sure. Look, I think this is extremely important in today's workforce. You have to have an all-round mental wellness program. And you have to have a wellness program that's focused on aspects that people are not always looking at directly. You need to look at financial wellness, because that's a huge impact on mental well-being. You have to look at psychosocial wellness, and you have to make wellness available to the employee and their family, because they may all be going through something together. So it can no longer just be a, you know what, we have a wellness program, it's here, so you can just call a toll-free number if you need to speak to someone. It's not that. It needs to be real. It has to be impactful. It needs to be measured. So you need to find out what are the biggest problems in your workforce. And once those problems have come through, obviously anonymously, because that's one thing I've realized is that if there's any kind of leak of information, you lose credibility so quickly with a wellness program. And it's extremely important to make sure that those interventions that you're putting in place are not going to be used to judge someone. And look, I was at a previous company where if you wanted counseling, you needed to go to your manager and say, you know what, I need counseling. Or you had to go to HR and say, I need to go for counseling. Can you imagine how stressful that is for a person who is already going through something to have to say, listen, I need help, and then go and speak to another person? And as much as, look, we're all human beings, right? That manager may go and tell another person. And even if they don't, the feeling of that person who's gone and asked for help, they may think that the next person knows because they've had to go to their manager. So it's about creating the safe space to make sure that we are prepared to provide the services that are necessary for all of our employees, but at the same time, they have to be believed and they have to be lived by every single person.
I'm going to quickly throw in a little bit about from the policy lawmaking perspective, because I think there is a gap in a number of pieces of legislation that deal with this. So often there aren't guidelines. You know, if we had a piece of legislation that was amended and had certain clauses, it would be compulsory for all companies, both in the public and the private sector, to provide those sorts of frameworks beyond just a toll-free line. Yes. So I think that's the first thing. But beyond that, we're also not looking at it in a creative sort of form. I'm sure many people in the room will have at some point encountered, you know, somebody who might have gotten the calling to be a sangoma, right? Now that's a very particularly sensitive issue from a decolonial perspective as well. There's no frameworks, not even at the legislature, to deal with that. And the person who was the chairperson before me, unfortunately she's passed away now, may her soul rest in peace, but she went through a similar process, and she said, but actually, how can we not? You know, we live in a country where we are so diverse, both racially, with religion, you name it, we're diverse. And we haven't actually developed our policies or our laws to be in line with who we are as a people. And I think there's something really, really to be said about that, and something that we need to close the gaps on. And it actually is not just a Gauteng legislature thing. This is something that needs to be fought for in national parliament so that it's across the board.
Wow, yeah. This is a question for all of our panelists, and I'll start off with you, Wenzile. How are Gen Z shaping the future of innovation and growth in Africa's professional landscape?
Could you please repeat the question? I can't hear you.
So how are Gen Z shaping the future of innovation and growth in the professional landscape?
Could you please perhaps move on to the next panelist, because the audio is quite bad.
No worries, no worries. Okay, Lesego? Yeah.
Sure. Well, they've brought in new skills. We never had a gig economy of influencers. We never had children that wanted to be influencers growing up. You never wanted to have a child. We never had kids that wanted to code. So the Gen Zers have introduced new economies and new ways of making money outside of our parents' 9 to 5. We were exposed to parents being teachers, nurses, policemen. Now we're talking about influencers, app creators, technicians that create and solve for day-to-day problems. So they are solving for our day-to-day problems in a new way. And they also venture into new business things that we never explored before.
Yeah.
They're creating apps that create a connection between financial inclusion and your business needs. They solve for day-to-day problems in ways that you think they're closed in their bedrooms playing music, but meanwhile they are creating an app that solves for a new banking tool. So they're creating new ways and new spaces and new economies for us in a way that none of us imagined. So that's what I think they're doing.
Yeah.
Maybe also just to add on, because I was also thinking about the problem-solving nature of Gen Zs. One of the things that we tend to do is we don't go step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Gen Z could start step 1, 2, 3, 7, step 12, and then go back to 5, and then you're like, I don't really understand what's happening. Even me, I don't really understand how we're doing it. But why that's important is it does create innovation. It does foster a different kind of thinking. It does often cut through a lot of the noise. When I joined legislature, some of the problem-solving thinking, for example, we have a huge backlog of petitions at the legislature. And one of the things we said, or we proposed as young people, we said, well, why are we not using AI to help sort through? It doesn't mean we take away the human aspect completely, but it means we can identify issues in certain areas before they become hotbed problems, etc., etc. When we spoke about the use of drones to deliver medicine in rural areas where it's taking long to build roads. I mean, when we said the whole AI to solve service delivery issues, I mean, a lot of the older generation were like, what do you mean, artificial intelligence? No, hold on, we don't have, you know. So the point really is this kind of thinking differently. This thing of skipping steps actually can produce innovation.
We've got a statement or a message for you from Mirinda Francis on Hopin saying, Honorable Hassan, we need more women like you in our government. Halala.
Made my day. I was having such a hectic day. I mean, the team will tell you I came in here in a huff and a puff. That was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirinda. I also want to hear from you as well in terms of this question, how it is. Once again, just expanding on it. How are they shaping and growing this professional landscape in Africa?
Look, I think our Gen Zs have an incredible entrepreneurial spirit, right? And I think that they, more than millennials, look, I'm a major overthinker, right? I feel like they're not afraid to fail. So they will take the chance and they'll fail fast and they learn from it. They up on their feet already and they're at it again. I had the opportunity of judging the being a judge for the TransUnion Rising Star Awards. And through that process, just the presentations that came forward from our young generation and the ideas that are coming forward from them are so absolutely incredible. And I think that if we are there to support them, the professional landscape will completely change if they're able to actually make that impact that they want to make.
I love it. Yeah. Wenzile, I hope you can hear us better now. what are some of the lessons that we can learn from Gen Z, specifically around innovation?
Thank you. I can hear you much better.
Yeah.
I think some of the biggest lessons we can learn from Gen Zs is that their ability to gain autonomy, stay relevant, and lead with technology. They're able to endure long working hours, but at the same time create multiple opportunities to be part and parcel of social justice and social innovations here in South Africa and across the globe. At the Tuma Foundation, we work with small businesses all the time. And unlike our traditional businesses, most of these social innovation are driven specifically to solve societal problems. And during this time of working with them, one of the things that has stood out about the Gen Z generation is that they remain empathetic and they remain people who drive Ubuntu in this country. They are breaking down the strongholds of capitalism and bringing up a different way, socio-economic way of creating job security and creating small business within the continent. The cultural shift that they bring within the workplace is always so intriguing to see that they are able to emotionally regulate around their personal and basic needs. A Gen Z will not work on a Saturday. They will not work on a Sunday because a Gen Z's view of the workplace is that, yes, the workplace has changed, but so have I. I've changed post-COVID. There are new ways to do things, hybrid setups work, virtual setups work. They have dynamically shifted the workspace and given us a new way completely to look at the future of work. And I believe that the cultural mindset is going to really take the workplace and the future of work into a very interesting space.
Love that. All right. And as a parting shot to the rest of our panelists, Lesego as well. What are the lessons that we can learn from Gen Z?
Lots of lessons.
Yes.
Particularly for me, it's the lesson of linking purpose to what you do on a day-to-day.
Yes.
I think it gives you an extra gees to deliver and go the extra mile if you know why you are doing this for. So always ask, why am I doing this? Who is it going to benefit? And it's also okay to be honest if it's going to benefit one person, but I need to know. So that sense of purpose for me is what I always take from what the Gen Z bring to the table.
Love it.
For me, it's accountability. I think Gen Zs are a group of people where, like you said, they're not afraid to fail, but they're also not afraid to tell you or themselves in some ways when they haven't done the best possible, where they've stepped out of line. If I think about how my brother holds me accountable or my parents accountable, even something in a personal relationship like that, there is a value to that. And it also means we're constantly striving for the best version of ourselves, but also it means that we're not going to fall into, hopefully, toxic or sort of problematic backward thinking.
Okay. Parting shot, Letitia?
Look, I think that they've really taught us how to embrace a multi-generational workforce. And I think that if we are able to get the value from each and every generation, I mean, each generation comes with their own strengths, right? And if we're able to actually get that value from each and every generation and embrace it from a diversity perspective and realize that age is part of diversity as well. And if we're able to get all of that value, it'll be absolutely incredible and so powerful for our country and for the workforce itself.
Round of applause for our panelists. Thank you guys so much. That was awesome. Thank you. Gen Z, yes. She wants a selfie. Okay, no worries. Yeah, so another round of applause for our panelists. Let's do our selfie. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. There we go. All right. Wow. Really awesome stuff. Okay, so we've been getting a lot of requests here for another networking speed dating session. So let's go. We're going to have 2 minutes. Once again, introduce yourself to one new person. Talk about your business and the problem that you solve. What does your business do? What problem do you solve? So someone new, not someone that you previously introduced yourself to. Here we go. The session starts in 3, 2, 1. All right. Okay, that's your 2 minutes up. Your 2 minutes is up, delegates. All right, we're going to do another round a little bit later on. All right, thank you all so much. Okay, everyone, so we're going to go into our network luncheon, but very quickly, please go to the Standard Bank activation and you stand a chance to win a prize worth 10,000 Rand. So go to our Standard Bank activation to stand a chance to win 10,000 Rand. Lunch is going to be served in the foyer area. You can find seating